For this afternoon's performance, the role of Ralphie will be played by Principal Analytics Engineer at HubSpot, Nicholas Yager. The role of narrator and special guest will be played by Grace Goheen, Product Manager at DBT Labs. And the role of Barnold, Core Platform Analytics Engineer, will be played by myself, Dave Connors, Senior DX Advocate at DBT Labs.
Welcome to Story Hour. Today we are going to delve into the classic tale, the enchanted learning vehicle Meshify's a DBT project. This is a three-part story about the data team at Megacorp Big Co. Incorporated, a massive conglomerate with lots of data and even more stakeholders. Our cast of characters includes Barnold, an analytics engineer who works on the core platform team, and Ralphie, who specializes in modeling our sales data. Ever present is Janet, a data manager who needs her data yesterday. Our analysts find themselves faced with a set of problems that may sound familiar for those of you who develop in large DBT projects with lots of contributors across a diverse organization. Ralphie and Barnold, whether they know it or not, are dealing with undefined ownership of models, unclear interfaces between teams, and simply too many models slowing down their development. Our story will follow these heroes as they use dbt-meshify, a brand new command line tool to add model governance and cross-project lineage features to their DBT project, solving these problems along the way. Our story unfolds in 3 chapters. Chapter 1, an unexpected journey into data contracts. Our heroes, faced with the breakage, will learn how to protect their DBT projects from unexpected changes. Chapter 2, a line in the sand. Our heroes will define their interfaces and commit to maintaining their boundaries. And Chapter 3, a project all my own. Our heroes will migrate to a multi-project architecture. Chapter 1. As our action begins, Barnold and Ralphie have settled in at their desks, ready for another day of generating actionable insights, when suddenly...
Hey, Barnold, I hate to bother you, but did you happen to make any changes to any of our revenue-related models? I'm seeing some jobs failing, and I know I didn't make any changes.
Revenue-related? Yeah. I thought you handled that. I just handled the our core entities. I can check my Git history here. I did do a couple cleanup changes recently, and oops.
What do you mean, oops?
Yeah, Ralphie, I'm sorry. I maybe sort of kind of accidentally removed the is preferred customer column from my customers model. I'm looking at the DAG and I can see your transaction model is right downstream. That wasn't like an important column, was it?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of powers all of our revenue metrics and models. It's in like every dashboard.
Well, how the heck was I supposed to know that? The marketing team told me to clean up unnecessary fields and I thought that would be an easy change.
Oh boy.
Was that a Slack sound?
Oh no! Oh, Janet must have seen the failing jobs and now she's not happy.
Uh-oh, we better give this a read. Hey team, seriously frustrated over here. The latest of the project is a total disaster. Changes to upstream models are breaking our downstream tests. It's like nobody cares about stability. And those core entities, who's even in charge? It's like a game of hot potato and it is not fun. The lack of organization is driving me up a wall.
While Janet's message may seem harsh, I'm sure many of us can empathize. It can be challenging for one data team to trust another when changes to upstream models are breaking downstream jobs. No one knows who owns the core entities in their project, and the relationships between teams' models are too complex to safely make changes.
But like, that's not my fault, right? Another Slack?
Oh no. Oh man, this DBT project has become an absolute disaster zone and we can't rely on it anymore? It became a breeding ground for chaos, and guess who's at the center of it all? You got it, Barnold. Uh-oh, she's got your number. The fact that we're drowning in this tangled web of confusion is a testament to your complete lack of responsibility. Whew! You're wasting valuable time and resources trying to salvage your mess. You should have stayed home today.
I think I'm gonna get fired.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? This DBT project is a giant web of confusion, and our teams never communicate because no one knows who owns what. It's impossible to keep developing on this project without, accidentally breaking something and unleashing Janet's wrath.
I know, and when this was a lot smaller, when we were a smaller team, this was a smaller project, we could work together a lot easier, but now we're kind of walking on eggshells and nobody can get anything done.
I just wish there was a way to untangle this without starting totally from scratch.
Yeah. Huh? What?
Hello, Arnold. Hello, Ralphie.
Who are you?
How do you know our names?
My name is Miss Fizzle, but you can call me the Fizz. And I think it might be time to take a little field trip.
A field trip? Where?
Well, inside your DBT project, of course.
To be fair, we're not in school anymore, but beside the point, it's a complete mess. We'll get lost in an instant.
Not with the expert navigation capabilities of the enchanted learning vehicle.
Oh, okay.
Come on, once we're inside, I think we'll find some pretty neat ways to improve the organization, reliability, and governance of your DBT models. Let's take chances, make mistakes, get meshy.
Well, given the state things currently are, I guess we have nothing left to lose.
And Janet's not going to be able to fire me if she can't find me, so I guess we might as well go.
Whoa! Whoa! Oh my God! Where are we?
Welcome to your DBT project. Right now, we're traveling through the project lineage where we can see how one model relates to another. Let's take a look at that broken relationship that was failing your production jobs.
That thing is looking rough.
Yikes, that's pretty bad.
All that damage just because I removed one measly column?
I mean, it does power Janet's favorite 3D donut chart. Like, it's important.
Janet does love to play favorites, and I'm starting to get the feeling I'm not one of them.
That's right.
It seems like this relationship could definitely use some TLC. Sounds like there's a lot riding on this connection.
I had no idea it was so critical to you, Ralphie. It was just a lot easier to know who was using what when our team was small and our project was tidy. I never want to let you down again.
Yeah, I know. I just really wish we had a way we could help build up some trust again now that we have this complex project.
Not to intrude here, but it sounds like you need a way to reliably expect what the customer's model is going to look like.
That's exactly right.
And Barnold, it sounds like you need a way to safely make changes to your models while still meeting Ralphie's expectations, no matter how high they might be.
I couldn't agree more.
I've got an idea.
Ooh.
Sounds like we should add a model contract to this relationship.
What's
A
that?
model contract is a set of upfront guidelines that define the shape of your model. You can enforce a model contract by providing the column names, column types, and any additional warehouse constraints that you want to add. A model contract affects the DDL that dbt generates when you do a dbt run. So with an enforced contract, dbt will include your defined column names and data types in the create table statement. So if you later make a breaking change to a contracted model, dbt will throw an error. This will prevent you from accidentally introducing breaking changes to important models in your dbt project.
That sounds amazing. Then I'll know exactly what I'm building and exactly how my changes are going to impact everything downstream.
Yeah, and knowing that Barn will be able to make changes safely and I know what to expect means that I'll be able to work on my own parts without worrying about things breaking too. You know, I think I've heard about model contracts somewhere. In a recent product session, I think Jeremy Cohen was saying something esoteric about them. You know what? If I recall correctly, they seemed like a lot of work to put together, like a lot of YAML, right?
Ralphie makes a really good point. If I'm going to have to define every single column in all my models and their data types, I'm going to be drowning in work, like I'm not already.
Well, you're not alone.
Huh?
Pals,
Whoa.
meet dbt-meshify with a dramatic sound effect. dbt-meshify is a brand new command line tool to help you add model governance and cross-project lineage features to your dbt project by automating the creation of your configurations.
Huh.
And it's also a wrench?
And it's also a wrench
okay.
somehow. The dbt-meshify package will let us add these features to our project with a few simple commands using the dbt selection syntax that you know and love.
I love that stuff.
Wildly useful.
All right, so we want to add a new contract to our model. So let's use the dbt-meshify add contract command. Mind if I pop on into your dbt project?
Go wild.
Yeah,
All
good to
right. So I'm going to go ahead and run the dbt-meshify operation add contract. And I'm going to go ahead and select your customer's model, since that's the model that we want to add a contract to. Meshify, do your stuff. All right, so we'll be able to see the logs that tell us what took place, and I can also take a look at the changes to my YAML file. So we can see that I now have a brand new enforced contract on my customer's model with all of the column names and data types that we would expect. So we've got a brand new model contract with no bespoke YAML writing needed.
That was pretty easy. So now DBT is going to, oh, well, we might as well commit these changes.
Oh, let's do that.
Oh, yeah.
do
Don't
it.
want to forget that. Feeling pretty confident in those. Holy cow, look how clean it is, Ralphie. It's amazing.
Wow.
So that's great. DBT is going to enforce the data building, and Ralphie knows what to expect. But this is one of my most popular models. I do a lot of development work here. What happens when I actually need to make some changes that are going to break our agreement? How do I manage that change with Ralphie?
Ooh, this sounds familiar. Jeremy Cohen was waxing poetic about something. Model versions, that's the feature, right?
That's exactly right, Ralphie.
Amazing.
Model versions allow you to define brand new logic for your dbt model and produce two outputs that consumers can choose between. It's a pathway to upgrade your logic without breaking anyone's work and gives consumers time to migrate to the new logic as they're ready. All right, I'm gonna hop on back into this project if that's all right with y'all.
That sounds awesome. Let's do it.
All right, so I'm gonna try out the dbt-meshify version command. And I'm gonna select the customer's model again because I want to add a new version to the customer's model. Meshify, do your stuff. All right, again, we'll get the logs that tell us what's happening under the hood. If I take a look at my YAML, I can see that my latest version for customers is 1, but I've now got version 1 and version 2 of my customer's model. So we've got version 1 of customers, which can maintain our old logic. And then Barnold, if you want to make a change to this model, you could do that in customers version 2, make any change you want, and then you could provide Ralphie some time to migrate to the newest version.
Seems easy to me. What do you think, Ralphie?
This is absolutely fantastic. I think we should definitely be adding this to our project. Let's commit this.
All right.
Commit it.
Love to commit these changes.
Love to do version control on my project. Wow, I'm feeling good about that.
Yeah, this is really nice.
Chapter 2, a line in the sand.
You know, this helps a lot, but I really wouldn't have known who owned all of this business logic if we didn't see this failing dbt build job. And if we look at the entire DAG, we zoom out, I'm not really sure who's owning what just from looking at this. I mean, I know my part of the project. I can say that it is the transaction model and everything upstream from that with the exception of stores and customers that Bartle maintains. If only there was some way that we could perhaps keep track of who owns which part of our project.
It sounds like it's time that we divided and conquered this DAG. Let's sort your nodes into groups to better understand what these models do and who should be on the receiving end of Janet's Slack messages when things get messy.
Probably still me.
Groups are collections of model nodes that are defined in the YAML in your dbt project. This allows you to define the owner of that set of nodes, including their contact information, and more finely control how consumers ref models in that group by setting access levels according to the interfaces of that group.
Hang on, Fizz. What the heck are access levels?
Arnold, I'm so glad you asked. Model access in dbt allows you to enforce which models are allowed to reference a given model. So there's 3 types of access in dbt. We've got private, where your model can only be referenced by other models in the same group. Protected, where your model can be referenced by other models in the same project. This is the default. And then public, where your model can be referenced by any models, regardless of the group or project that they're in. We'll talk more about when that's helpful a bit later. All right, so we want to add a new group to this project, so we can use the dbt-meshify group command to accomplish this. Now, Ralphie, do you want to give it a spin?
Would I ever? All right, let's hop into the terminal again. So as the Fizz said, I'm going to end up using the dbt-meshify group command. And since this group pertains to me and the folks that I work with, I'm going to call this sales analytics. It's important to know who owns what, so I'm going to set the owner name to yours truly, Ralphie. And because we're using our node selection syntax, I'm going to select all the models I care about. So for instance, all of our sales union together and the upstream models for those, all of our returns union together and the upstream models for those, and of course, my pride and joy, transactions.
You love that model.
I do. Meshify, do your stuff. Wow, look at those logs go. This is fantastic. All right.
That's a lot of action.
That's a lot of action. We should probably look to see what changed in our files to know what kind of went down here. Let's look at groups YAML, and I see that we have a new group defined. It's called Sales Analytics, and the owner is yours truly, Ralphie. Now let's look at my pride and joy, transactions. We're going to look at our models, and I see that transactions is part of the sales analytics group. And as an added benefit, I have a contract being enforced and set automatically for all the columns in this model. That's awesome. If I look at my intermediate models, it's either part of the group too, and access is on there. That's interesting. I see marts, or our staging models, are also part of the group, and also there's access changes. Hey, Fizz, what's up with all the access level changes on these models?
Well, dbt-meshify understands how your models are being used and then sets the access levels accordingly. So for models in your project that are only going to be referenced by other models in the same group, their access is going to be private. But for models that are referenced by models outside of your group, or maybe leaf models of your project, those are going to be set to protected.
Wow, this is truly wild. You know what, if I get to have a group, I think it's only fair, Barnold, if you get to have a group as well. What do you think?
I'm ready to have my own group too.
Let's do it.
I'm going to follow some really similar steps. You made it look real easy. I'm going to run dbt-meshify group, and I'll call my group core data models. Easy enough. The owner is me this time, not you, Ralphie.
That's fair.
And then, rather than selecting the nodes, I know that what's not yours is mine. Generally, we share everything, but in this case, we actually want to draw a line here.
Yeah.
I'll use the exclude flag from dbt to exclude your group and group everything else into my core data models group. Sure is thinking pretty hard. That's a lot of stuff.
It's a big project.
All right, let's check back at our files too. The group's YAML file has a new entry, core data models, set to myself as the owner. My customer's model is also protected and doesn't have a contract since we did that in the first step. But you also use my stores model. And the call center's model is at the end of my DAG, where people definitely query that for their BI use cases. So I'm glad to see a contract on both of those and that they're set to protected. My staging models are in the group and set to private. Looks awesome. Clean as heck.
Should we commit those changes?
You know what I feel about committing changes. Let's do it.
You know, I'm really curious what this has done to our DAG. Like, how have things changed?
Let's take a look.
Whoa! That's really beautiful. It's a little garden.
Now I could get used to this.
Chapter 3, a project all my own.
You know, I'm really happy with what we've done by having contracts and groups in place. Everything's a lot cleaner, but I can't help but say that I have to squint my eyes in order to really see what's going on here. And, you know, I kind of wish that things were a little bit cleaner. I wish that my project would parse faster, run faster. You know, what if we took all the revenue models out and did something else with them?
Well, hang on. Did something else? Are you breaking up with my models?
No, I mean, is that even possible? I mean, it doesn't matter. Bottom line is we definitely still have a relationship here. My models are intrinsically related to your models, Barnold. But I'd like things to be a little bit cleaner.
You know, there comes a time in every analytics engineer's life where they need a dbt project of their own. So when you two are ready to take that leap, you can use the dbt-meshify split command to split your one project into two. Multi-project deployments in dbt allow you to manage interfaces between contributors seamlessly, so no more stepping on each other's toes in a monolithic project. Reduce manifest size and parse times by reducing the size of each component project, and enable cross-project lineage without having to duplicate nodes via sources.
This sounds exactly like what we need to do with our project in order to make it easier for us to work together. What do you think, Barnold?
I'm just going to miss you and your models so much.
Hey, we're not breaking up forever. I think it's important for us to keep this trust together and for us to come together as a team to make this decision. And you know what, in a sign of goodwill, how about you, Barnold, run this command, and I'll even let you name our new project.
You mean it?
I mean it.
You want me to name your project?
You betcha. It's important that we have a good mesh here.
Well, okay, if you're feeling ready, and I trust you, let's go ahead and do it.
Let's do it, Barnold.
Just like the Fizz says, we can use the dbt-meshify split command. And how's this sound? Big corp, go to market.
I was thinking dollar bills, but that'll do, yeah.
All right, well, I guess we're in agreement there. I'll go ahead and select your group and everything upstream, so you have all your sources and everything you need.
Yeah.
And I'll make sure to exclude my group and all of its sources, so that we have that same line that we saw in our beautiful garden, but split into two projects instead. Meshify, do your stuff.
Whoa.
Oh my
Wow,
gosh.
that's a lot of changes.
That's an uncanny amount of changes. I'm going to look at my file tree because it might be a little bit easier to absorb. Whoa, that's a folder up there called Big Corp Go to Market, and I see a dbt project.yml file. That must be your project, and it's got a dependency directly against the old project, Megacorp Big Co Inc. Wow, that's incredible. I see all your models, and there it is, transactions.
My pride and joy.
Check this out. Your ref statement to my model has been transformed into a cross-project ref with the project name first and the model name second.
See, we still have a dependency here. This is perfect.
And I see your sources, your staging models, everything you need. A project all your own.
It's all here. But what happened to your project, Barnold?
Well, looks like it moved some stuff around, but the biggest change that I see is that the customer's model just got flipped to public. And Fizz, that's what you were saying enables access across projects, right?
That's exactly right.
Wow. And these still have contracts from before. So our interface is pretty clean. You can feel pretty confident selecting any one of these public models.
We definitely have to add this to our
We
project.
definitely need to commit these changes.
Yeah, this has to happen today.
Wow.
You know, I wonder what's happened to our DAG as a result of splitting our single project into 2 component projects.
Oh my God.
That's so simple.
I can handle 2 nodes.
I don't have to get new glasses. This is amazing.
Consider your DBT project meshified. All right, I think it's time for us to head back home.
All right. I gotta be honest, I was starting to get a little queasy. I'm pretty happy to be home.
Yeah. Ooh,
Another Slack message?
hey, Barnold, it's okay. I think you're going to like this one. Hey, channel, check out Barnold and Ralph's latest update to the company DBT project. The project is much easier to follow now that the go-to-market models have been partitioned into their own project. Major kudos for adding contracts and versions too. Let's find more opportunities to adopt this technique across the department. Wow, that's amazing.
I've never read a kinder message from Janet in my life. Thank goodness dbt-meshify helped us clean up this mess in record time. In a matter of minutes, we added contracts to our most important models so we can confidently build and use the data that comes from them. We learned how to add versions to manage our changes when our expectations need to change. We grouped our models together and automatically set their access levels to the appropriate levels. And finally, we broke our monolithic project into 2 clean component ones. Miss Fizzle, this Meshify tool is out of this world. Have you thought about sharing it with the world?
Well, it's up to us to spread the word. Let's write a story about our journey and share it at the Coalesce conference
In San Diego?
in San Diego.
In 2023?
2023!
Wow!
And we did just that. dbt-meshify is ready to be pip installed anywhere that you run Python. For more documentation, check out the dbt-meshify GitHub page. And if you want to start your team's adoption of model governance or cross-project lineage features, try out this package. If you run into any bugs or have ideas for new features, feel free to open up an issue on GitHub, and one of us will take a look. Go forth, and remember, take chances, make mistakes, get meshy. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, folks.
Okay, we have a little bit of time left over for questions, and I have a microphone for that. So if anyone has any questions. Yeah.
How many rehearsals and practices?
How many rehearsals and practices? What do you think, Grace?
Did we hit 10?
Oh, more than 10.
Maybe 15?
We did some dress rehearsals earlier this week, some blocking.
In the back.
So when you split the projects, does it create another repo for you, or do you need to take care of that in the?
So by default, it's just going to put it in a subdirectory so that you can kind of manage the Git history within the scope of a single repository. There's an optional argument you can pass to put it in any file path on your local computer. So if you wanted to stick it into a new repository and commit it to somewhere else, feel free to do so. Let's go 1 and then 2.
Are there any issues when your project, instead of having those kind of large YAML files, has one YAML file per model?
No, so it'll look for where the configuration for each individual node is, go to that location, yoink out the stuff that was specific to that model, edit it, and put it back where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Where was 2?
In the white.
You're right here.
Is this different than the dbt mesh stuff that was referred to in the new dbt cloud features, or does this work on core?
It's complementary. So this just helps split your project, and then your result is 2 projects, and you can deploy those in whatever way you'd like.
Yeah, so all the model governance features, so versions, access, contracts, groups, et cetera, you can use all of that in core, so you can use all of those commands. The one thing that's different is you need cloud for the cross-project references. So the split command is a little bit different, yeah.
What is split? What about the base data sources? Did it create the one for each, or was it a common master one that it used? How that?
What about the base data sources?
The actual sources themselves, yeah. So that was selected by our split command to include the upstream parents of each group. So the sources moved over, the source configurations moved over to the new project as well.
So it made like a copy, like a, or is there a master one that would be, or is it separate?
Just separate, like each individual source table is treated separately.
I think if they had a shared source, is that right?
Yeah.
Like if both projects had a shared source that they were referencing.
If both are sharing the same source, it'll persist in both. So it won't be moved over because it's not an exclusive resource within a single project.
Yeah.
All the way in the back.
I need the enchanted learning vehicle.
Can I use Meshify with 1.5?
Great question. Some recent changes to selection syntax parsing might mean that it's 1.6, but it was compatible at one point.
I actually think it still is. Your change was backwards compatible. So yes, it should still work with 1.5. 1.5 has all of these model governance features that we were previously discussing, so it should work just fine. Yep. We'll get you next.
Just expand a little more detail on how the versions work. It was moving so fast. I think, like, are there 2 SQL files and 2 physical? Just have details.
Yeah, absolutely. So model versions generally mean that you have a SQL file per version of that model. So what that command actually did, we had just a single customers model. It deleted that one, updated it to _v1, and then copied that to customers _v2. So you ended up with 2 total files. And dbt is semantically able to understand that those 2 files correspond to 2 objects in the database, but are belonging to the same dbt model itself. So yes, did I answer your question?
And I'll also call
If it renamed the first table to _v1, that's a physical name on the database? How does that
Correct, yeah. So there's good documentation about how to handle versions. Actually, Jeremy, I might put you on the spot if you're still here.
Way over there.
Basically, handling that in the generate alias name macro. There's a couple different strategies you can have, but most people will usually make changes so that whatever is set to the latest version persists as just plain customers. And you either like have additional copies for each subsequent version, or just kind of know that the unversioned name in the warehouse is the one you want to persist and use.
A+, I'm so proud.
Thanks, Jeremy.
The only other thing I'll add is that you can add a deprecation date for that to kind of provide a warning and to specify what the window of support is going to be.
Right here in the blue.
I just wanted to go back to the splitting raw table question we had before. So you split raw tables it's being persisted in both projects. I'm assuming now they're completely different, completely detached from each other, so changes to one are not reflected in the other.
So that is correct. So you still have the same underlying database object, but you will have different nodes being managed within each separate project. Correct.
Okay.
Which does create challenges. And I think I could probably toss it back to Dave and say, presumably you're staging these sources somewhere else, and you can reference those stage models within your downstream other projects if you're splitting.
But theoretically, you could have the side effect of having them become decoupled and kind of diverge.
Yeah, ideally you're staging your raw data sources once and using that consistent definition everywhere. And in the multi-project architecture, it's kind of a new recommended best practice not to copy raw data sources between projects. So if you can avoid it, do so.
You're good.
If you want to use semantic versioning, is there a way to force that on the command line where you can like actually,
Great question, Grace. I think
2.3 version, B5.
is semantic versions like possible with just the core version feature itself? I don't actually know the answer to that.
Yes.
Jeremy's saying yes.
Again, great movie. I was like live with. So definitely this was magical, but I wanted to, when we do this, like, are there any edge cases or like any manual checks and stuff like that, you recommend to do, I mean, it's the way he did it is definitely great, but I mean, there are a lot of things happening in the behind the scenes. So any cases would be do some checks around it, put some constant around that we should be careful of.
Yeah, we've got in our README a handful of callouts of things that you might want to check manually after running these commands. It's like one of them, we're moving fast, like dbt project YAML gets kind of a funky formatting right now. We have an open issue for it, but that's something you would want to manually check.
Packages.
Packages. Want to expand on that
Yeah,
one?
so because it's a little bit difficult to map a single name of a package to a row in the package's YAML, depending on like who the actual producer is, like dbt labs or some other like Fivetran, whatever it might be, we've just opted to just copy the entirety of the package YAML over. So there might be a couple extra in there that aren't actually required by the resultant project, and inversely by the source project itself.
And by similar logic, we are also very greedy about sharing existing macros across split projects. So if you have macros defined in one project and you split that project out, we actually copy those macros across all the split projects, so that way we don't accidentally forget anything. It's up to you to remove macros you don't require anymore.
It will be like your edge cases too.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, if we find more edge cases, we'll add to that. I think it's on our README or on our documentation site that we have like a list of the, yeah.
All the way in the back, if you don't mind, Grace. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, Grace.
Yeah, so there's not currently a way to do any type of like public macros or anything like that. One recommendation that I think a lot of people use is to have a separate repo just for the macros. Kind of, you can think of it as like your own internal personal dbt package, and then install that into all of your other packages to have access to all the common repos. So that would be my recommendation for that. Yeah, good question. Getting my step count, and this is really great.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, if you know that you want to go ahead and split projects as your end goal, would you recommend still creating the groups first, or do you have to?
Do you already know your selector? Like, would you already know how you would select those models?
I guess you would know which ones, but if it's like messier to do a long selector versus group first?
I don't think it matters a ton. If you already know your selector and how you would split it off, I would just use that rather than creating the group first.
Cool. Yeah, there's nothing stopping you from just accessing that directly. We kind of wanted to, dramatize the idea of defining interfaces first and then graduating to the multi-project architecture.
Yeah.
Hi, if I already have two projects that are already separated, can I run dbt-meshify to do all the groups and all the other fancy stuff that you showed there?
Yes.
You sure can.
What method are you
Absolutely.
currently using? Are you doing like the source hack, where you're defining outputs of one dbt project as sources in another dbt project?
No, it's much worse than that.
Oh.
No, they're just treated as two separate projects today.
Okay.
And then we just reference the previous table.
Cool. So it's not very narratively easy to kind of incorporate the idea of connecting projects back together or reflowing projects. But within dbt-meshify, we do have the ability to connect together existing database objects across projects that have been split based on the actual database object name. So you can do that if there is a shared object name for the tables that are equivalent across the projects.
And there's a separate command for that. So that's dbt-meshify connect.
Connect, yeah.
And you'll do, instead of selectors for what models you want to select, you'll provide the essentially paths to the directories that hold the separate dbt models, and then dbt-meshify will figure out what needs to be a cross-project dependency between those.
Yeah, it'll reflow all of those relationships. That way, if you do have refs, it'll actually make your multi-project two-argument refs across the board and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a lot of benefits of splitting once, from a given point in development. So it sounds like it's better to split after you've created a project. But do you have a list of benefits outlined anywhere for people that are new to DBT?
Great question.
Yeah, there's a brand new guide that just got posted yesterday that has in our Dev Hub, under our guides, there's a best practices for a multi-project architecture. I can pull it up for you after to find the actual link, but that kind of specifies at what point you should consider splitting out your projects and how you should consider. We walked through the approach of like splitting out our project based off team, but there's a handful of other reasons you might want to split off. Like maybe you want your staging models in a separate place and your other downstream ones separately. So yeah, I would check out that guide. Yeah.
So how CI jobs work on multi-project, and if there are any best practices, in a project, changing something affect tests in another project that are not necessarily a contract, but I don't know, checking numbers, totals, production against dev.
That's a great question. So I think in orchestration and in development across project and dbt Cloud right now, a consumer project has no ability to affect the upstream project. It's just reading in the outputs as a dependency. So it's a good question. I think the idea behind the contract is that any changes that would maybe have a breaking change downstream would actually be captured in the scope of the CI for the upstream project. And then only changes that are really relevant to the downstream project itself would be within scope for when you do a select state modified, for example, it would just be the stuff within your own project that you made a change on. Your question about tests in the downstream on public models of the upstream is a very good one. I think it's probably one we should think about, Grace.
If you have a downstream project that has a test on an upstream model. So I think typically you define your tests for your models within the same project that the models are defined.
Yeah, like I'm thinking on a model that has, we have many core models, and then some tables that are dependent on those that have some summary of metrics that are dependent on the core models, like for finance, for sales. And let's say a core model is a project and the sales is another one, and we accidentally in the core model do something that duplicate roles.
Yeah.
And then we are not properly, testing that, and someone is testing total.
Yeah.
You're affecting something which is not formatting of it's not, it's not within the contract constraints. It's like total parametric.
Yeah.
That are in the downstream model.
One type of contract that you can add are like warehouse constraints. So if you're worried about duplicates, that's something you could add like a uniqueness constraint as part of your contract, and then it would enforce that and essentially like break if you were ever in a situation where you were producing duplicates. Yeah.
How about the files that are not necessarily dbt files, let's say Jenkins files, Docker file, all kinds of supporting things, supporting CI/CD and other things? We will have to copy them into multiple places and support them in multiple repos.
Yeah, great question. There's an open issue on the repo to do exactly that. We're trying to define like the full universe of what those files might be. Like folks use SQL fluff, any number of sort of like TOMLs or configuration files. We'll probably just have a quick issue to establish a base list and have that copy operation happen as part of the split command too.
Apologies if I missed it. It seems like your example here is assuming that your multiple projects live in one repo. Is there a Meshify workflow that supports breaking these things out into multiple Git repos?
There is. So there's a flag on the dbt-meshify split command where you can specify the location that you want your split off project to be built to. By default, that's just a nested dbt project within your current repository. But if you had a separate folder that you wanted it to build to instead, you would just specify that in the command.
How do you accomplish like the cross-project references when they're sitting in different repos?
So the cross-project reference is powered by dbt Cloud, so that the metadata service of Cloud is able to resolve those. Core option is always to install as packages, which is just like the old-fashioned way.
Okay, I think we're over time, so we'll call it there. But if you have more questions, feel free to come find us afterwards. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.